My name is Robert Frost. I'm a trooper with the state police. I've been a trooper for about 19 years now. I started working in Wayne County in 1987 as a road patrol trooper. And I've moved around different areas, doing road patrol for 12 years. I have experience doing reconstruction of accidents. I teach at the police academy, and I'm currently assigned as a school resource officer for Gananda and Marion schools. So I deal with a lot of problem children right now. Personally, I've been married for 5 years. I have 2 stepsons that are teenagers. I have 2 children of my own, a 4-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. And my 2-year-old girl has Down syndrome, so I do have a handicapped child in my house, and I deal with them also at work. All different kinds of things from grades kindergarten and pre-K all the way up through 12th grade through the 2 schools. As far as street experience, the 12 years that I've been on the streets in the Wayne County area, it's not uncommon to respond on a weekly basis to an incident with a child or an adult with either a mental illness, a handicap, or something where communication is limited and the thought processes may be different than you and I as normal people. And it is a challenge for us. As far as law enforcement, we are trained generally to identify when things are not working right, when we're dealing with somebody who may have either mental or handicapped issues out there. Currently in New York State, they do not have any different privileges dealing with us than anybody else. When a street officer is dealing with somebody, their first job is to protect the person and serve the person. The bottom line, that's what we try and do. Sometimes we have to use physical force. Sometimes we have to use chemical agents or things like that to control a person, to get them into a situation where we can help them. And a lot of times that seems pretty violent and pretty non-caring on our part when we take part of these situations. The last thing anybody wants to do is see their child taken down and restrained by a police officer or a group of police officers. But sometimes that may be the way that we start dealing with it. One thing I found over the years is parents with handicapped children are usually more prepared than anybody else in dealing with situations and crises. You know your children, you know what sets them off, you know what doesn't set them off, and you know what facilitates them. Having that information up front when police officers arrive, or EMS people arrive, or counselors arrive, can really make the situation go much calmer and smoother for everybody involved. And that's one of the big pieces of advice that we like to give people, is be prepared and expect that at some point during your child's life they're going to have a not so much a confrontation, but some kind of interaction with a police officer. And if you prepare for that before they get involved, and before you get involved, it might make it easier for everybody around. What I've done with my daughter is I've prepared a loose leaf book, and it's got tab sections in it. One section is her diagnosis. What does my daughter have and what affects her? She has both Down syndrome and she's got cardiac problems. So we have a history for each one of those things tabbed in a book. What this lists is not only what she's afflicted with in the medical terminology, but also who her doctors are and people that we can contact if we need anything. I'm sure you all know about the new HIPAA laws. And they are some of the worst things that we deal with in law enforcement, because if I call up your doctor or your child's counselor, what do you think they're going to tell me? Not a thing. However, you have the right to get that information. And you can get that information and prepare it in a booklet so we know what we're dealing with. What we put in the front of our book is strategies. It's just an area marked strategies. And in it, it's things that work and things that don't work with my child. Sometimes the uniform itself is enough to set off a person. Maybe it's a firearm that sets off a person. Maybe it's the loud radios that we carry. So if you have strategies up front that we can say, hey, take the radios off. Maybe deal once, maybe not on the streets we can't deal with a plainclothes officer, but maybe if we get back to a station, we can turn a person over to a plainclothes officer where they feel calmer. Maybe a male officer or a female officer works best, where we can make those arrangements. But if we have all these strategies written out in advance, and you have a book that if your child has to be taken into custody or taken with an officer that you can hand them, that they can refer to, it would probably help people all the way around. We do have training in dealing with people with mental illness, but it's not specific. It's general training. We don't have the time or the resources to train every officer on every specific things, and we couldn't remember it anyways. There's just too much out there. Our best educators are going to be you as the parents. But you have to remember, you have different phases of training that you can do with the police officers or the medical people or the EMS people that may be dealing with your children. So phase one is, this works, these are the strategies dealing with my child. This works and this doesn't work. And maybe down the road a little bit farther, phase two, where the situation is controlled and under control, you come up with, okay, now you can break it down. This is what the effects are, and this is what the diagnosis is. And then another part may be where we can go for more advice and more information. I don't know a lot about the bipolar disease, so I'm not going to even get into it because you guys know 10 times as much as I do, and I can't give you any advice as far as that. But if you set up a strategy that works for your child and you educate people as far as what that strategy is. Also, if you know police officers that live in your area that you're familiar with, that have you in your jurisdiction, educate those people first, because they will pass the information on. There's many times when we show up at scenes of different things that an officer may hear a call at your residence and key in on it and move that way, even though another agency is involved. I have a police officer who works for the sheriff's department that works near me, that if he hears me responding to a specific call or dealing with a specific student, he may interject and call me and say, hey, this works with this child, or this is what you need to do with this child. So if you have a family friend that's a police officer, or even an acquaintance, introduce yourselves. Give them the information about your children and what this affects. Because he's going to carry it on from not only your child, but other children too, as far as dealing with them. And you're going to find if you do make that connection with a police officer, it's going to give him a lot more time and patience to deal with it. He's going to take a lot more time if you can form that bond right there. As police officers, we back up a lot of calls. So if an officer responds to your house, that may be one of 7 or 8 calls that are pending at the time. So they don't really have a lot of time in certain situations to deal with things. So the more information that you can give them quickly, the better he's going to be able to take care of things. And we all know how well we think in crises. Usually the thinking part goes right out the door in a crisis, and that goes for everybody. It goes as officers too. It goes for EMS people. You get thrown in a situation, you have certain expectations, and if they don't happen, then it can throw things into a tailspin. So if you prepare yourself first, prepare yourself going into a situation, preparing for the worst, but knowing it's going to come out better than that, you're going to be better off. If you have any questions that you want to ask me, I think that's probably all I can give you as far as advice. We've been very successful out where we are in dealing with kids with emotional problems. We have a very small role in the manner that they're dealt with. If it's a criminal case, they have the same rights on the streets as everybody else. However, they don't have more rights on the streets. Their illness may be an excuse later in court as far as mitigating a sentence or something like that.